Again, this is what we consider our free consulting segment of the webinar, open access to gurus Tony and Scott. So each question that you submit will receive 2 or 3 perspectives. Actually, it doesn't look like Tony has returned, so it might be me and Scott, but you'll still be in great hands. And we do have some great questions coming in now. But we have room for more, so just enter your questions into the text field of the webinar panel, and I'll be pleased to read them aloud for myself or Scott to respond, and we'll hope that Tony pops back in before we have to close it up in about 10 or 15 minutes. So let's start with John asks, do you have any books that cover the subject of this webinar? Well, in a way, we have very dense and comprehensive courseware documentation, and it is like a book, and it's also like a process guide as well. We run through a number of workshops. We use Excel workbooks, not for the analytics, but for that very important documentation we were discussing, to step through each phase of the model development process and understand all the information that we collect, starting with business understanding and data understanding, through to how the data is prepared, what were the transformations that we made, because just when you think that that model may not have use down the road, your boss will come back and say, let's update or remake that model from a few weeks ago, and then you'll want to see how you how you created it, so you can go back and redo it. So that's among the resources that are offered to you. But that is like a book in its own. Of course, it only comes with the training course. And then there are other books that we recommend within the training documentation itself, as well as who are the major software players, both commercially and in open source. Again, vendor-neutral perspective, so nothing's getting showcased, but it's certainly we want everyone to have a grip on the reality that's out there. So we can include a few books. We're going to have an email follow-up to those who attended, and they're going to have various resources, and we can include some recommended readings from that. Dale asks, do you recommend, and you know what, keep that in your pocket, Scott, if you want to recommend any books, and we'll combine that with the second question here. Dale asks, do you recommend any professional certifications? Our courses at present are, we're accredited by NASBA, the National Association for Statisticians and Accountants, and we're going to apply also for accreditation through Informs. So if you go to analyticsmagazine.com, you'll find a lot of information about Informs, and I think that's a great place to look for certification in the analytics field. Obviously, certification in this field is a little newer. It's still forming, and we're always looking for the best accreditation. Up until a couple of years ago, we couldn't find accreditation around general analytics. It was very vertical market focused, and there wasn't one that kind of went across, so we went to the closest that we could find, and that was, like I say, in the accountancy field. But now there are more coming up in general analytics, and Informs, I would say, at present is probably the leader. Let me pause there. And Scott, anything you'd like to add about recommended books? And I guess now that the practice is branching out so much, you have all these specializations. I'd almost want to say, is it around data preparation? Is it around methods? Is it around strategy? Is it a general introduction? John, if you'd like to be more specific about the nature of the text you're looking at, perhaps Scott can cite anything that might be specific to that. And certifications, anything to comment on those two initial questions, Scott?
Well, just to be very brief, can you hear me, by the way?
I can. Yep, you're good.
Super. I do have a list of recommended introductory books. I'll send that to Eric, and he can forward it on. Would like to emphasize that the course is in a format, so the course itself comes with a book that you can refer to. As far as certifications go, just underscore what you said, Eric.
Okay, very good. Morrow asks, we had a similar question in the last webinar. What do you think about the CRISP DM methodology? You know what? I always go first, and that's not fair. Scott, to you, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you want to go first with CRISP and your perspectives on it?
Sure. CRISP is out of the standards that are already out there. most notably the KDD process, the CRISP-DM process, and SAS's SEMA process. Out of those three, it is the most developed, most advanced, and it deals with something that Tony talked about in his portion of the webinar that's missing from the other two processes, and that is the objective portion of it. You know, what's the real reason we do it? It goes outside of just developing a model. Why are we actually doing? What are the objectives? What's the problem we're trying to solve? At the same time, it's a bit out of date, so the process that we use in our seminars is very similar to CRISP, but it brings it up to modern times. CRISP has been out, geez, I guess for at least 10 years. So the process that we use parallels it, but it's made current.
Good point. Yeah, and those that know CRISP, they would certainly recognize the general flow of the 6-phase and how it relates to CRISP. And we're big CRISP fans, but like you say, it just got stale over the years. And one example of a difference, to bring it a little up to date, was that it kind of blended data understanding with data preparation. And they really are two different exercises, two phases of how you really should process or proceed through the analytic process. And that's one thing that we cleaned up in the 6th phase, was to further separate out more of the data assessment phase as opposed to beginning to prepare and transform the data for analytics. So a great question. Michael asks, how can I gather executive support for analytics projects? Well, I can think of a couple of ways, depending on the approval process that you have, the funds that you may have available to do a project internally before you try to spin up a practice overall. And if you do have some resources, I would suggest doing the plan phase first, and you know, doing the more comprehensive assessment to first understand you know, what is your overall environment like for analytics? Are you at the starting line? What are the projects of interest? How do the resources that are available support those? And so from that, what is the cross-section that comes together that form the valid projects, and how can we prioritize them so that we get to cheat? We then get to start on the projects that have the greatest viability and the greatest, that are going to get the greatest attention of leadership. And when you combine those, right there, strategically, you're at such an advantage, regardless of how specifically accurate your model is. So, you know, there's so many data scientists that are so focused on, you know, like Tony said, that R squared, and so they're building faster race cars, and then they're driving it off in the wrong direction or running the wrong race because they hadn't done this assessment. And that's what we're trying to really reinforce in this event. So if you do the assessment, if you have a budget to have a consultant to guide you through that, to stage it the right way and to framework it, then I would say it then makes sense to set up a pilot project and take the results from that, and that is, you know, that's what's really going to make an impact to sell standing up an analytic practice, or at least a predictive analytics factory where you can churn out models in a very agile fashion. That's one way. Now, if you don't have a budget to do that initial study, that assessment, and an initial pilot, then I would say, you know, having a professional speaker come in for you know, a half a day to do an executive level presentation on the capabilities and limitations, the risks and rewards, and what happens when this is done right. What are the risks in doing it wrong? And really shedding light on the practice, removing a lot of the mystification around it, and speaking in a language that executives can appreciate. That can help to get buy-in from executives, and then spend the second half of the day, because a lot of senior consultants, it's difficult for them to justify just a half a day, so you may as well use that second half a day for a roundtable discussion. Make it more specific to your organization, even if it's not with the highest level leadership, with some of the functional managers, so that you know, you can start to target the areas in which the technology can be applied. And then thirdly, if that's not feasible, come to a public training event so that you can bring the resources back and put together your own justifications, make your own internal presentation. But I would say, in order, they're probably effective in that way. Scott, I gave kind of a comprehensive answer to that. If you want to polish up any ends of it, you're more than welcome, or even take off in a completely a different direction. Otherwise, I will yield to the next question and certainly have you go first.
I want to add a couple of things just to emphasize.
Great. Sure.
Is within the resources available, we do have wire support, so we can provide extremely low-cost wire support to help you develop the second part of it. What you really want to wind doing is presenting a business case, and that's within any way that you do. Even if predictive analytics is accepted in your organization, or if it's not, you want to put together a little bit of a plan to put together the business case, and that business case should be wrapped around the lowest hanging fruit, where you perceive that you have the greatest opportunities for success, and also to try to get some peer buy-in in the process of putting that business case together.
That's a great point, and I think that's where so many data scientists fall short. They're so anxious to get at the software and the data, and you can't blame them. That works for so many BI-type projects. But when it comes to predictive analytics, it's really those the few who have the soft skills to be able to make good presentations internally to leadership, and to be able to interview all of those that contribute to or draw from the modeling process, those that Tony outlined on the full project team, and obtain information from all to, again, come into a structured, comprehensive assessment. And it's the results of that that can really help to target a specific project, that which has the greatest propensity for success and impact, and then to be able to translate that back, again, in terms that leadership will appreciate. And one of the greatest questions we had in an earlier Q&A, somebody asked, what are the best ways to visualize the results? And the consultant we had on the call that day had the most poignant answer. It was, ask your leadership. I mean, it's not just about which display is the prettiest. What is going to have the greatest meaning to them, and what is going to display in the way that they best understand or they prefer? And that's part of this whole process. Is so much of the industry seems to be putting emphasis on these technical skills and the methods and the techniques, and by all means, all senior consultants at the modeling agency can run, as far into the technical deep weeds that anybody wants to go. We have no aversion to that, but at the end of the day, that's not what ends up revealing the true impact, and at the end of the day, the operational impact that's going to be measurable and residual, and that's what we like to keep focused on. And Scott, I forgot to mention that just recently we changed the name of wire support to Escort on Call. I'll be mentioning that in my summary here. In keeping with our tongue-in-cheek at the modeling agency, if the name wasn't, the company name wasn't tongue-in-cheek enough, now the modeling agency has a series of escort services, and try taking that to your CFO to acquire an escort service from the modeling agency, part of our twisted, dry sense of humor here. So let me take one more question. We're coming up on 12:30, and certainly appreciate those of you who in the middle of your workday have taken so much time with us in the interest of predictive analytics. I promised Scott first response to the next one. Dale asks, what does it take to start up a data modeling shop?
Okay, Dale, that's an excellent question. It doesn't take much, actually. It takes data and software and somebody that has the initiative to take it on. The next level down is certainly all institutions, entities have data to work with. You need access to that data, believe it or not, and that's one of the reasons why we set up the courses the way that we do. There's plenty of software that you probably already got, i.e. Excel, that you can work with to do a lot of your initial predictive analytics work. And there's also open source software that's available that's very powerful, and you can work with it at no cost. So your startup costs are very low. What really requires the most at the beginning is your time and your ability to do a little bit of study on your own, which can take quite a bit of time. That's why we recommend doing the courses. But you really got everything that you need at this point, and sometimes in order to start it up, you have to do a little bit of work on your own off the clock in order to make sure it's successful. But you basically need initiative, someone who's willing to study and learn, and data and software. And all three of those are easily available. Probably your time is the toughest one to come upon.
Great points. And I would add to that I would be curious whether, when you say shop, is it within an existing enterprise? You know, are you serving internal clients and you want to set up a practice within that enterprise, or are you looking to establish your own organization? You know, initially, or you're an independent and want to start up your own practice. Those would have two kind of different responses from me. And so since you say shop, I'm going to assume that it's external. You're not within an enterprise, because that is a different one. And that's really what we the modeling agency focuses on, is to help enterprises establish their internal practice with existing staff, actually. But I think your question is more external, starting up perhaps your own consultancy. And I think, you know, a lot of that is to reinforce what Scott laid out. I put on top of that you do have you know, a number of direct implementation engagements under your belt, that you have you know, that experience to draw on. You've been in contact with a lot of the, not just the analytical realities, but the organizational realities, because there's a lot of politics that can actually tank a project as well. And that's why I keep emphasizing these soft skills. If you have those kinds of soft skills, getting the technical experiences, at least what you need to be a successful analytics practitioner these days, is not all that complicated anymore. Modern software is very capable. You do need to have a lot of finesse with data preparation, and that comes in going upstream to how you interview the members of the team and the objectives, how you design the overall project. So if you've got those skills under your belt, and I emphasize soft skills, then you're well on your way. Oftentimes, your clients will have tools either in-house or they can be recommended. You can start with open source, so that's often not a big hurdle. But the bigger hurdles for most is really having that acumen to be able to engage with all members within the organization, and if it's not your organization, the client's organization, to be able to formulate the right approach, the right problems, the right priorities, and then the right designs, so that in the end, those results are measurable, and the resulting projects are sustainable and residual, and they can have good lifetime model management entailed. So, great questions. We did end up filling up the remainder of our time with the great questions that were coming in, but at looks like 32 minutes after the hour, we better draw this event to a close. I'd like to certainly thank our attendees today for your sustained interest and your active participation, as well as Scott and Tony for your fantastic segments, and Scott, your valuable contributions to the Q&A. We'll follow up with an email shortly. Like Scott had said, he's going to give us some book recommendations, and we'll have other resources and suggestions that will hopefully be useful to you. From there, we hope you've already offered permission for us to stay in touch with the Modeling Agency's quarterly data mining newsletter, and that you'll consider joining us at a public training event soon. And remember to act quickly to ensure your space in the September Predictive Analytics and Data Mining course series in Washington, D.C. There's still a few spaces left, even at the 25% discount level, but they're sure to go fast. And as with any production, the earlier you register, the deeper your registration fee discount. And don't forget that your colleagues can join you anytime for up to 30% off. Now, if you don't have a training or travel budget but would like the guidance of a seasoned mentor, you might be interested in the Modeling Agency's Escort on Call program. That's what Scott Terry was mentioning. Escort on Call is essentially a retainer account that provides remote open access to a TMA senior consultant. Simply open up an Escort on Call account, and you've instantly added a wealth of experience and capability to your existing bench without expanding payroll, administrating complicated contracts, or taking elevated risk on larger commitments. We'll get you the answers you want. We'll guide you through it, show you how it's done, implement any data mining tasks you may wish to delegate, and then we'll remain on call until the next time you need us. It's the ultimate retainer account. And meanwhile, When we're not actively working, you're not paying a dime. So a link to the Escort on Call description page will be among the resources included in the follow-up email. It's really the smallest toe-in-the-water perspective to take in entering predictive analytics and having seasoned guidance to carry you along. So on behalf of myself, Tony, and Scott, thank you again for attending Data Mining Failure to Launch. Have a very pleasant afternoon, and this brings the webinar broadcast to a close.